Good morning, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. It's Friday, April 4th, 2025, and this is your AM update. Federal prosecutors arguing they did not violate a federal judge's order blocking the removal of suspected Tren de Aragua terrorists under the Alien Enemies Act.
He was the most amazing kid. Oh, so smart. He had college football guys looking at him to play in college.
A high school football star fatally stabbed in the chest at a high school track meet in a senseless act of violence.
I will forego the Democratic primary for mayor and appeal directly to all New Yorkers as an independent candidate.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams sidestepping a wide field of Democrat primary challengers in a long-shot bid for re-election. And the Trump administration puts state public school systems on notice. No more DEI. All that and more coming up in just a moment on your AM Update. I want to tell you all about Patriot Mobile, one of the few cell phone service providers that operates on all three of the major networks. If you have cell phone service in this country today, you can get exceptional service with Patriot Mobile. That's why they offer a coverage guarantee that others cannot. You might think switching to Patriot Mobile is painful, but it isn't. No need to spend hours in a retail store waiting your turn. Just call Patriot Mobile's 100% U.S.-based team from the comfort of your own home or office, and they will have you activated in minutes. Still locked in a contract? Not a problem. Patriot Mobile's contract buyout program covers up to $500 per device. Keep your same number, keep your phone, or treat yourself to an upgrade. So consider joining Patriot Mobile today. Support faith, family, and freedom with every call and text you make. Don't wait. Do it today. Go to patriotmobile.com/Megyn or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Megyn and get a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/Megyn or just call 972-PATRIOT. Federal prosecutors arguing they did not violate a federal judge's order blocking the use of the Alien Enemies Act when the Trump administration deported two planes of suspected Tren de Aragua gang members, that's a U.S.-designated terror organization now, to El Salvador. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 allows the government sweeping authority to detain and deport non-citizens from countries at war with America. The Trump administration arguing the law also applies to invading forces or those pursuing an incursion, including transnational gangs and terrorist groups. The March 15th order declaring that Tren de Aragua is, quote, conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions against the U.S. The order accuses the gang of operating in conjunction with the Maduro regime of Venezuela to destabilize the U.S. 5 Venezuelan nationals sued the Trump administration to prevent their deportation under the act. Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit Court, James Boasberg, originally blocked the deportation of those 5 Venezuelans, then verbally expanded his order to include all deportees facing removal under the act. The written order halting the wider removal of aliens did not come until more than an hour later. By that time, 2 planes carrying more than 100 suspected gang members had already departed for El Salvador. Federal prosecutors arguing the oral command, quote, did not amount to a binding injunction. They're focused on the written order. This hearing, the latest and most high-profile case, involving here a district judge appointed by Barack Obama, imposing a national injunction on an executive action. The hearing lasted about 1 hour. Senior legal correspondent for The Federalist, Margot Cleveland, has been following the case from the start. Ms. Cleveland reporting on X, quote, in this hearing, the judge came off as the most biased and unkeeled he has yet. Ms. Cleveland saying the hearing focused on who violated the order, as opposed to questioning whether there was a violation at all. Judge Boasberg is expected to issue a ruling sometime next week, the DOJ facing possible sanctions if found in contempt. Judge Boasberg's earlier ruling enjoining any more deportations under the act was upheld by the D.C. Circuit Court. A petition seeking an appeal of that ruling has been filed with the U.S. Supreme Court. Vice President J.D. Vance asked by Fox about the lawsuits against the administration's immigration actions.
Well, look, we're going to keep on appealing. We're going to keep on fighting back here. Illegal border crossings down over 95% in pretty much every part of the American southern border. Then, yeah, we got to get the violent criminals out of here. The courts, some radical left judges have stepped in and said you're not allowed to deport MS-13 gang members. That's crazy. We think the Supreme Court's going to overrule it. We do not ask permission from far left Democrats before we deport illegal immigrants. We do the American people's business. And again, for the American people who are watching, this is such a weird, mistaken placement of priorities.
A heartbreaking story involving a senseless act of violence. A Frisco, Texas high school football MVP, a 4.0 student, fatally stabbed in the chest while attending a high school track meet as a spectator. Frisco Independent School District identifying the victim as 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. The suspect, 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony, in police custody now, charged with first-degree murder. The twin brother of the victim, Hunter Metcalf, describing the moments leading up to the altercation.
There was this kid, before I knew his name now, this kid was sitting under our tent at track. We asked him to move. He started getting aggressive and talking reckless. And my brother stepped in and said, "You need to move." He's like, "Make me move." Austin grabbed his backpack. The kid, I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab. But then I look at my brother, and then I'm not going to talk about the rest.
Austin's twin brother attempted to stop the bleeding until paramedics arrived on scene. Their father said he has already forgiven Austin's killer, but questions how he was raised to be capable of this. The victim's mother telling ABC News 8 about her son.
He was the most amazing kid. Oh, so smart. He had college football guys looking at him to play in college. His goal was to play in college. He just wanted to play football. His life was going to the gym and working out and being a leader on his football team. And he just had such ambitions and a drive that it's hard to find in a kid. And he's just such a good spirit, and so many kids loved him, and his brother lost his best friend.
Austin's last post on X came just 2 days before his murder. He wrote, quote, "Faith that God got me heart and my work will pay off." Authorities say no bond has been set yet for Mr. Carmelo, Frisco police declining to release any additional details about the suspect. New York City Mayor Eric Adams on Thursday shaking up his re-election campaign in a video posted to social media.
Though I am still a Democrat, I am announcing that I will forego the Democratic primary for mayor and appeal directly to all New Yorkers as an independent candidate in the general election.
The announcement coming 1 day after a federal judge dismissed corruption charges against the mayor. In September, the Biden DOJ charging Mr. Adams with bribery and campaign finance offenses. Mr. Adams denies the allegations, calling them a politically motivated response to his outspoken criticism of the Biden administration's border policies, though the investigation into Adams had started long before those criticisms. More than 200,000 migrants arriving in New York City from Texas under President Biden, the city required to provide shelter and resources to all newcomers by its right to housing law, quickly facing an existential financial burden. Mayor Adams becoming a frequent critic of the Biden policies allowing unchecked migration, then candidate Donald Trump making this joke at the Catholic Al Smith dinner in New York in response to the charges against Mayor Adams.
Mayor Adams, good luck with everything. They went after you. They went after you, Mayor. Ah, boy, I do that. 9.5 months ago, I said, he just said something about the administration. He's going to be indicted any moment. And guess what happened? But you're going to win. I think you're going to win.
In February, the Trump DOJ directing prosecutors to drop all charges against Mayor Adams. Critics called the move a quid pro quo, suggesting Adams agreed to cooperate with the Trump administration on immigration in exchange for his freedom. Federal prosecutors requesting that the case be dismissed without prejudice, meaning charges could be refiled at a later date. On Wednesday, however, the judge opting to dismiss the case with prejudice, writing, quote, dismissing the case without prejudice would create the unavoidable perception that the mayor's freedom depends on his ability to carry out the immigration enforcement priorities of the administration, and that he might be more beholden to the demands of the federal government than to the wishes of his own constituents. Mr. Adams saying that the pending charges prevented him from running a proper primary campaign. 9 other Democrats are challenging Mr. Adams for the nomination. Primary election scheduled for June. The general is in November. The most recent polling prior to Mayor Adams switching affiliations showing him in third place at 8% and falling. That's within the Democrat primary. Disgraced former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, leading the pack of Democrats at 38%. OMG. He's at 38%. I'm sorry. This is like the primary is the most important thing in the election in New York. The Democrats going to win. Andrew Cuomo is basically on his way to becoming the next mayor. Okay. A March Quinnipiac poll showing Mayor Adams' approval rating at 20%. That's the lowest of any city mayor in nearly 30 years. The Department of Education putting state public education officials on notice. You comply with Trump's anti-DEI guidelines or you risk your federal funding. State officials on Thursday given 10 days to return a form verifying the elimination of programs promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within the public school systems. This step, the latest in a series of actions by the Trump administration, compelling states to end practices prioritizing identity politics over individual merit and academic outcomes. On Wednesday, the Department of Agriculture, which gives money to public schools for various classes and opportunities, announcing funding freezes for the state of Maine, targeting administrative and technology programs. The move follows Maine's refusal to enforce the Trump administration's interpretation of Title IX, which bars men from competing in women's sports. Democrat Governor Janet Mills, who already caved on this issue when it comes to her state universities, along with the Maine Principals Association, publicly opposing Mr. Trump's policy, citing their own state law prioritizing gender identity rather than biological reality. Earlier this year, a biological male winning a high school women's state pole vaulting championship. Despite multiple prior warnings, Maine officials refused to comply. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins describing the directive received from President Trump.
He said, if they're violating federal law, Brooke, we should not be sending them federal taxpayer dollars. And I said, sir, you're 100% right. And he said, well, go fix it. So that's what we did at USDA. Yesterday, the letter we sent to Governor Mills said immediately, we are freezing the funds. This is not just a threat that's empty. This is what the Trump administration does, and this is who we are. We are here to fight for American people, the American values, and American dream, and our American girls and women every single day. So those are the steps we're taking at USDA to effectuate his vision.
Secretary Rollins warning Governor Mills in a letter, quote, USDA, alongside other federal agencies, will continue to pause and, where appropriate, terminate categories of education programming in Maine if these Title IX violations are not resolved. Secretary Rollins confirming funding for school meals remains untouched, though broader reviews of other streams of funding are underway. Mark Zuckerberg moves to D.C., the latest billionaire tech entrepreneur to purchase a home in President Trump's neck of the woods. The Meta CEO dropping $23 million in cash on the 15,000 square foot property in a swanky Northwest D.C. neighborhood. The Washington Business Journal reporting the buy is the third most expensive home sale in the district's history. The purchase comes as Mr. Zuckerberg prepares for a major antitrust trial set to begin on April 14th. The FTC aiming to break off messaging app WhatsApp and Instagram from parent company Meta, saying the company is too big and stifles competition. The Wall Street Journal reporting Mr. Zuckerberg was at the White House on Wednesday, the third visit of Mr. Trump's presidency, part of a charm offensive by the Facebook founder aiming to repair the relationship between his company and President Trump. Meta controversially banning the president from its social media platforms in the aftermath of the January 6th riot. In January of this year, Meta agreeing to a $25 million settlement with the president relating to that decision. Mr. Zuckerberg reportedly made multiple trips to Mar-a-Lago during the transition, and Meta donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. Mr. Zuckerberg also announcing major policy changes shortly after President Trump's election.
We've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Facebook saying it was going to abandon fact checkers, instead implementing a community notes style system similar to X. So far, though, the government's antitrust case against Meta remains a go. That'll do it for your AM update. I'm Megyn Kelly. Join me back here for the Megyn Kelly Show, live on SiriusXM Triumph Channel 111 at noon East, on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and on all podcast platforms.